Hey guys, tonight we're doing something very calm, very slow, very Roman. So dim the lights, put your phone face down if you can, let the ceiling fan do its thing, and let's gently drift back more than 2,000 years to a place that would eventually conquer half the known world, but for now was mostly mud, goats, and very confident men arguing about whose grandfather was more legendary. This is the Roman Empire, explained slowly for deep sleep. And don't worry, we're not starting with legions marching or emperors yelling. We're starting at the beginning, when Rome was not impressive, which is always a good place to begin. According to Roman tradition, Rome was founded in 753 BCE. This date was decided much later by Romans who really liked neat timelines. It's based on legend, not receipts. And the legend begins, as many Roman stories do, with abandoned babies and unnecessary drama. The twins Romulus and Remus, sons of the god Mars, because of course they were, left to die, saved by a she-wolf, raised to be strong and brave. Already this story is doing a lot. Eventually, the twins decide to found a city, together, which lasts about 5 minutes. They argue about where to build it. Romulus kills Remus and names the city after himself. So right from the start, Rome is built on sibling rivalry, mild urban planning disputes, and murder. Very on brand. Now, early Rome was not an empire, not even close. It was a small settlement along the Tiber River, strategically located, which is historian speak for close to trade routes and less swampy than nearby places. The Romans loved to say they were practical people, and early Rome was practical in the way a village is practical. Wooden huts, simple farming, goats that probably smelled terrible. For a while, Rome was ruled by kings, 7 of them according to tradition, which again feels suspiciously tidy. The first was Romulus himself, founder, brother killer, first king. He ruled until he mysteriously disappeared during a storm. The official story was that he became a god. The unofficial story was that the Senate got tired of him. And honestly, either explanation fits. After Romulus came a series of kings who were supposed to represent balance. War kings, peace kings, builder kings, law kings. One of them, Numa Pompilius, was famously calm and religious, which already tells you he did not last long in Roman memory. He focused on rituals, temples, calendars. Romans later remembered him fondly, the way people remember a quiet substitute teacher who never yelled. Then came kings who were more aggressive again, expanding territory, fighting neighbors, doing king things. Eventually, Rome ended up ruled by kings from Etruria to the north. The Etruscans were more advanced in some ways. Better engineering, better art, better drainage. Romans appreciated this, but not enough to enjoy being ruled by them. The last king was Lucius Tarquin Superbus, which translates roughly to Tarquin the Arrogant, and that nickname did not come from his friends. He ruled like a stereotypical tyrant, ignored the Senate, forced labor, did whatever he wanted. But the final straw was not politics, it was family drama. His son, Sextus Tarquinius, assaulted a noblewoman named Lucretia. She told her family, then took her own life. And Rome collectively said, "Okay, that's it. No more kings." In 509 BCE, the Romans overthrew the monarchy. They swore never to be ruled by a king again, which is ironic considering how things will go later. They replaced kings with a republic, a system where power was shared among elected officials, at least in theory. The Roman Republic was built on the idea that no one person should ever have too much power, which is adorable. The Senate became the central institution, made up of elite men from powerful families. so power was shared, just not very widely. 2 consuls were elected each year. They had equal authority, so if one got ambitious, the other could block him. Checks and balances, Roman edition. In emergencies, Rome could appoint a dictator, but only temporarily, 6 months max. Again, this will age poorly. Early Republican Rome was not glamorous. It was constantly at war with neighboring cities. Latin towns, Etruscans, Sabines. These were not epic campaigns, more like seasonal brawls over land and pride. Roman soldiers were citizen farmers. They fought in the summer, then went home to harvest crops. This meant wars had a schedule, which is strangely soothing. Socially, Rome was divided between patricians and plebeians. Patricians were the elite families. Plebeians were everyone else. The plebeians did most of the work, paid taxes, served in the army, and initially had almost no political power. This led to centuries of slow, bureaucratic struggle, called the conflict of the orders, which sounds dramatic but was mostly petitions, protests, and procedural arguments. Plebeians eventually gained their own officials, called tribunes, who could veto laws and protect common citizens. Romans loved vetoes, loved them. Over time, plebeians gained more rights, access to offices, legal protections. This process took generations, which is very Roman. Nothing happens quickly, except violence. As Rome expanded, it absorbed defeated peoples, sometimes harshly, sometimes generously. Romans were surprisingly flexible with citizenship. They understood that giving people partial rights was often cheaper than constant rebellion. Rome was building a system, slowly, methodically, with lots of arguing. And as Rome grew, its elite families grew more powerful, more competitive, more obsessed with honor. Roman politics became a performance. Speeches, public offices, military achievements. Winning glory was everything, even if it quietly broke the system. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. For now, Rome is still a republic, still pretending it hates kings, still run by men who insist they're serving the state, while very clearly serving themselves. So let's gently pick Rome back up where we left it. Still a republic, still deeply convinced it hates kings, still run by men who absolutely love telling everyone how humble and duty-bound they are, right before doing the most self-serving thing imaginable. At this point, Rome is expanding across Italy. Not quickly, not dramatically, just steadily, like ivy or paperwork. Rome's neighbors are many. City-states, tribes, small kingdoms, each with their own customs, languages, and grudges. Rome fights them one by one, sometimes losing, often winning, always learning. And this is important because Rome is very good at losing. When Rome loses a battle, it does not panic. It does not collapse. It does not say, well, that was unfortunate, let's stop now. Instead, it rebuilds its army, raises more soldiers, changes tactics, and comes back again and again and again. This stubbornness becomes Rome's secret weapon. Roman soldiers are not heroic individuals. They are units, formations, disciplined lines of men with shields and short swords. The Roman legion is not elegant. It is practical. It wins by not breaking. As Rome expands through Italy, it offers deals. Some cities become allies. Some become subjects. Some are punished. Some are rewarded. Rome is flexible, which is rare, and effective. By the 3rd century BCE, Rome controls most of Italy, which is impressive and alarming, especially to a city across the sea, Carthage. Carthage is rich, powerful, maritime, located in North Africa, and deeply unimpressed by Rome. The two powers collide in what we call the Punic Wars, 3 long conflicts spanning over a century, filled with stubbornness on both sides. The First Punic War is mostly about Sicily and ships. Rome is not a naval power at first. which does not stop it. Rome looks at Carthaginian ships, copies them, adds a boarding bridge, and turns sea battles into land battles, because Rome understands land and swords and yelling. Eventually, Rome wins. Barely, but enough. The Second Punic War is the famous one. This is where Hannibal enters, brilliant general, legendary strategist, owner of many elephants. Hannibal marches his army across the Alps, which is still considered impressive, even by people who like mountains. He defeats Roman armies repeatedly, at Trebia, at Lake Trasimene, at Cannae. Cannae is particularly bad. Rome loses tens of thousands of soldiers in a single day. The Senate briefly considers despair, then decides against it. Instead, Rome refuses to surrender, raises more armies, avoids direct confrontation, and slowly wears Hannibal down. Eventually, Rome takes the war to Carthage itself. Hannibal is recalled and defeated at Zama. Rome wins once again, because of course it does. The Third Punic War is less a war and more a very long grudge. Carthage has recovered economically. Rome does not like that. So Rome declares war, besieges the city, destroys it completely. Carthage is burned, its people killed or enslaved, its land reorganized as a Roman province. Rome now dominates the Western Mediterranean, and it starts looking east. Greece, Macedon, the remnants of Alexander the Great's empire. Rome claims it is liberating Greece, which sounds nicer than conquering it. Greek cities are allowed autonomy, in theory. In practice, Rome is in charge. By the 2nd century BCE, Rome is an empire in all but name. Territories spanning continents, armies stationed everywhere, wealth flowing into the city. And this is where things start to get uncomfortable. Rome's system was built for a city-state, not a superpower. Governors are sent to provinces. They are supposed to rule justly. They do not. They tax heavily, exploit locals, get rich, return to Rome, run for office. Soldiers fight long campaigns far from home. Small farmers lose their land. Big landowners buy it up. Slaves replace citizens. Inequality grows, quietly, relentlessly. Two brothers, Tiberius and Gaius Gracchus, tried to fix this. They proposed land reforms, help poor citizens, limit elite power. The Senate does not appreciate this. Both brothers are killed, in public, by mobs encouraged by political rivals. This is new. Violence enters Roman politics openly, and it never really leaves. Generals gain loyalty to their armies. Armies gain loyalty to their generals. The state becomes secondary. Ambition grows louder. Men like Marius and Sulla emerge, reformers, strongmen, enemies. Sulla marches his army on Rome itself, which was previously unthinkable. Now it's just effective. He becomes dictator, executes enemies, rewrites laws, then retires, because why not? Rome is exhausted, wealthy, powerful, and deeply unstable. The Republic still exists, on paper, but everyone can feel it. Something is breaking. And somewhere in this tension, a young man is growing up, from a respected family, with big ambitions. His name is Julius Caesar, but we'll get to him slowly. For now, just let Rome breathe. Let the legions march in the distance. Let senators argue softly in marble halls. Let the Republic pretend it's fine.
All right, settle back in. If you're still awake, that's okay. Rome is about to get very busy, but we'll keep our voices low and our expectations even lower. So, Julius Caesar, born in 100 BCE, into the Julian family, an old patrician line, very respectable, also not particularly wealthy at the time, which in Rome is a problem, because politics costs money, a lot of it. Caesar grows up during chaos, civil wars, dictatorships, public executions, all very formative. Early on, he makes some bold choices, like opposing Sulla, the man currently murdering his political enemies. Caesar refuses to divorce his wife on Sulla's orders, which is romantic and also reckless. Sulla stares him, barely, and reportedly says, "There are many Mariuses in this Caesar," which is ominous and accurate. Caesar leaves Rome for a while, joins the military, does well, gets captured by pirates at one point. This happens. While held for ransom, Caesar tells the pirates they don't appreciate how important he is. He also promises to come back and crucify them later. They laugh. He is released. He comes back. He crucifies them. Because of course he does. Back in Rome, Caesar climbs the political ladder. Slowly, methodically, expensively. He spends money he doesn't have, throws lavish games, bribes voters, smiles constantly. He goes into massive debt, which in Rome is fine, as long as you plan to seize power eventually. To secure his position, Caesar forms an alliance, an informal one. Not legal, not official. The first triumvirate. Caesar, Pompey, Crassus. Pompey is Rome's greatest general, beloved, successful, a little self-important. Crassus is Rome's richest man, absurdly wealthy, deeply insecure about it. Together, they control elections, pass laws, block enemies. The Senate hates this, but cannot stop it. Caesar gets a major military command, Gaul, modern-day France, and nearby areas. For nearly a decade, Caesar conquers Gaul, brutally, efficiently, writing commentaries about it the whole time. These commentaries are very calm, very rational, very self-serving. Caesar describes himself in the third person, which is never a red flag. He gains immense wealth, battle-hardened legions, and popularity with the people. Meanwhile, back in Rome, things shift. Crassus dies, killed during a failed campaign in the east. Pompey grows closer to the Senate. The Senate grows nervous about Caesar. They order Caesar to give up his army and return to Rome as a private citizen. Caesar understands what this means. Trials, exile, ruin. So he pauses at a small river, the Rubicon, and then he crosses it with his army. This is illegal, symbolic, and irreversible. Alia iacta est, he allegedly says. The die is cast. Civil war follows, because of course it does. Caesar versus Pompey. Former allies, now enemies. Pompey flees Rome. Caesar enters the city calmly, politely, forgivingly. This is new and unsettling. Eventually, Caesar defeats Pompey. Pompey flees to Egypt, where he is promptly murdered by people trying to impress Caesar. Caesar is not impressed. He involves himself in Egyptian politics, meets Cleopatra, falls into a very complicated relationship. Cleopatra is young, intelligent, politically sharp. Caesar helps her secure the throne. She helps him feel important. They have a son, which Caesar never officially acknowledges in Rome, because that would be awkward. Back in Rome, Caesar returns victorious. He is named dictator, then dictator for 10 years, then dictator for life. This is not what the Republic was supposed to do. Caesar enacts reforms, some good, some self-serving. He restructures debt, expands citizenship, reforms the calendar. Yes, that calendar, the one you're using. He pardons enemies, which makes him seem magnanimous and also terrifying. But he accumulates honors, statues, titles, special seats, special clothing. People start whispering, is he trying to be king? Rome hates kings, remember? A group of senators decides to act. They call themselves liberators. They convince themselves they are saving the Republic. On the Ides of March, 44 BCE, they stab Caesar to death in the Senate House. Brutus is among them. Yes, that Brutus. Caesar dies at the foot of Pompey's statue, which is very poetic and very Roman. The assassins expect gratitude, applause, relief. They get chaos. The people mourn Caesar, angry, confused. Mark Antony delivers a funeral speech, very emotional, very effective. Civil war resumes, again, because Rome cannot stop doing this. Caesar's heir, Octavian, appears, young, sickly, unassuming. Mark Antony underestimates him. Everyone does. Octavian forms another alliance, the Second Triumvirate. Octavian, Antony, Lepidus. This one is official, legal, and very violent. They publish lists of enemies, proscriptions, public executions. Cicero is killed, which feels like the end of an era.
Cannae is particularly bad. Rome loses tens of thousands of soldiers in a single day. The Senate briefly considers despair, then decides against it. Instead, Rome refuses to surrender, raises more armies, avoids direct confrontation, and slowly wears Hannibal down. Eventually, Rome takes the war to Carthage itself. Hannibal is recalled and defeated at Zama. Rome wins again, because of course it does. The Third Punic War is less a war and more a very long grudge. Carthage has recovered economically. Rome does not like that, so Rome declares war, besieges the city, destroys it completely. Carthage is burned, its people killed or enslaved, its land reorganized as a Roman province. Rome now dominates the Western Mediterranean, and it starts looking east. Greece, Macedon, the remnants of Alexander the Great's empire. Rome claims it is liberating Greece, which sounds nicer than conquering it. Greek cities are allowed autonomy, in theory. In practice, Rome is in charge. By the 2nd century BCE, Rome is an empire in all but name. Territory spanning continents, armies stationed everywhere, wealth flowing into the city. And this is where things start to get uncomfortable. Rome's system was built for a city-state, not a superpower. Governors are sent to provinces. They are supposed to rule justly. They do not. They tax heavily, exploit locals, get rich, return to Rome, run for office. Soldiers fight long campaigns far from home. Small farmers lose their land. Big landowners buy it up. Slaves replace citizens. Inequality grows, quietly, relentlessly. Two brothers, Tiberius and Gaius Gracchus, try to fix this. They propose land reforms, help poor citizens, limit elite power. The Senate does not appreciate this. Both brothers are killed, in public, by mobs encouraged by political rivals. This is new. Violence enters Roman politics openly, and it never really leaves. Generals gain loyalty from their armies. Armies gain loyalty to their generals. The state becomes secondary. Ambition grows louder. Men like Marius and Sulla emerge, reformers, strongmen, enemies. Sulla marches his army on Rome itself, which was previously unthinkable. Now it is just effective. He becomes dictator, executes enemies, rewrites laws, then retires, because why not? Rome is exhausted, wealthy, powerful, and deeply unstable. The Republic still exists, on paper, but everyone can feel it. Something is breaking. And somewhere in this tension, a young man is growing up, from a respected family with big ambitions. His name is Julius Caesar, but we'll get to him, slowly. For now, just let Rome breathe. Let the legions march in the distance. Let senators argue softly in marble halls. Let the Republic pretend it's fine. If you're still with me, good. If you're drifting in and out, even better. That's exactly how Augustus would want this told. Quietly, calmly, with no sudden movements. So now we have Octavian, fresh off winning a civil war, standing alone, surrounded by enemies who are suddenly very polite. He does something clever, which is rare in Rome. He does not declare himself king. He does not declare himself dictator. He insists repeatedly that he is giving power back to the Republic. And the Senate, exhausted and nervous, says, No, please keep it. They give him the title Augustus, which sounds religious, ancient, respectable. They also give him control of the army, the provinces with legions, and most of the money. But on paper, he is just the first citizen, princeps, one among equals. Very equal, extremely equal. Augustus rules for over 40 years, which is an eternity in Roman politics. He stabilizes the empire, reforms taxes, creates a standing army, introduces a professional civil service. He also controls elections, decides laws, and quietly makes sure nothing happens without his approval. But he never says that part out loud. This period becomes known as the Pax Romana, the Roman peace, which means fewer civil wars. Not no wars, just fewer wars in Italy. Augustus is obsessed with morality, which is always a sign something interesting is happening privately. He passes laws encouraging marriage, punishing adultery, promoting family values. He even exiles his own daughter, Julia, for being too enthusiastic about personal freedom. This does not stop Augustus from having affairs, because of course it doesn't. Augustus understands branding. He rebuilds Rome, temples, forums, monuments. He famously says, I found Rome a city of brick and left it a city of marble, which is a very emperor thing to say for someone pretending not to be an emperor. When Augustus finally dies in 14 CE, Rome holds its breath, because succession is still awkward. Augustus leaves power to his stepson, Tiberius. Tiberius is not beloved. He is competent, which Romans rarely appreciate, and deeply unpleasant. Tiberius does not enjoy ruling. He does not enjoy people. He especially does not enjoy the Senate. He governs efficiently at first, keeps the system running, but grows increasingly paranoid. Eventually, Tiberius retreats to the island of Capri, leaving Rome to be governed by subordinates and rumors. Many rumors. Historians describe Capri as a place of extreme excess, strange rituals, cruel entertainment, uncomfortable age gaps. Some of this is probably exaggeration. Some of it probably isn't. Either way, Tiberius checks out emotionally, and that's never great for an emperor. When Tiberius dies, Rome hopes for improvement. It gets Caligula. Caligula starts well, young, popular, charismatic. Then he gets sick, and something breaks. Caligula becomes erratic, cruel, extravagant. He humiliates senators, executes people randomly, spends absurd amounts of money. He allegedly plans to make his horse a consul, which might be metaphorical, or might not. It's hard to tell with Caligula. Eventually, the Praetorian Guard murders him, which becomes a pattern. After Caligula, Rome gets Claudius, an unlikely emperor.
Claudius is older, physically disabled, stutters, limping. His family assumed he was harmless, which turns out to be a mistake. Claudius is surprisingly capable. He expands the empire, reforms administration, conquers Britain. But his personal life is a disaster. His wives dominate him, manipulate him, possibly poison him. Messalina, one wife, is infamous for her affairs. She allegedly marries another man while Claudius is out of town. This does not end well for her. Claudius eventually marries Agrippina the Younger, ambitious, intelligent, terrifying. She pushes her son Nero into position and likely poisons Claudius to make it happen. Which brings us to Nero. At first, Nero is fine, guided by advisors, interested in art, music, performance. He really wants to be liked. Then he kills his mother, which changes the tone. Nero grows increasingly detached from reality. He spends lavishly, executes critics, forces elites to applaud his performances. When Rome burns in 64 CE, Nero is blamed. He may not have started the fire, but he certainly uses it. He builds a massive palace, the Domus Aurea, Golden House, and blames Christians because someone has to take the fall. Eventually, the army turns on him, the Senate turns on him, everyone turns on him. Nero flees and kills himself. His last words are reportedly, "What an artist dies in me," which is very Nero. Rome enters chaos again, the year of the 4 emperors, fast, messy, violent. Eventually, Vespasian emerges, a practical man, a soldier. He restores order, stabilizes finances, begins the Flavian dynasty. Vespasian is famously blunt. He introduces a tax on public urinals. When criticized, he holds up a coin and says money does not smell. This becomes Roman wisdom. His son Titus follows, briefly, popularly. He deals with disasters, the eruption of Vesuvius, the destruction of Pompeii, then dies suddenly. His brother Domitian takes over, efficient, authoritarian, paranoid. He reforms the economy, strengthens borders, and terrorizes the elite. The Senate hates him. Assassins kill him. Again, Rome sighs.
Let's ease back in. No shouting, no stabbing just yet. Rome is about to have a rare moment of self-control. It won't last, but let's enjoy it. After Domitian is removed from existence, the Senate does something unusual. It chooses a calm, older man. No dynasty, no dramatic backstory, just vibes. His name is Nerva. Nerva is elderly, gentle, and fully aware he does not control the army, so he does the smartest thing possible. He adopts a capable general as his heir. This becomes the system, adoption based on merit, not blood. And for once, it works. Nerva dies peacefully, which already puts him in the top tier of Roman emperors. His adopted son, Trajan, takes over. Trajan is everything Rome likes: a soldier, a leader, a man who looks correct on statues. Under Trajan, the empire reaches its greatest territorial extent. He conquers Dacia, modern Romania, which brings gold into the treasury. Lots of gold. Trajan builds roads, aqueducts, markets. Trajan's Forum becomes a centerpiece of Rome. His column still stands, covered in tiny carved scenes of war. Very detailed, very Roman. Trajan is generally remembered fondly, which means he probably didn't terrify the Senate too much. When Trajan dies, he passes power to another adopted heir, Hadrian. Hadrian is different. He is introspective, cultured, bearded, very bearded. Hadrian loves Greek culture, architecture, philosophy, travel. He spends most of his reign touring the empire, inspecting borders, meeting officials, admiring temples. He also decides Rome has expanded enough, which is a radical idea. Hadrian pulls back from some territories, fortifies borders instead. In Britain, he builds a wall, Hadrian's Wall. Long, stone, very final. It marks the edge of Roman ambition and the beginning of Roman defense. Hadrian's personal life is quietly tragic. He deeply loves a young man named Antinous. When Antinous dies mysteriously in Egypt, Hadrian is devastated. He has Antinous deified, statues everywhere, temples, a cult. Rome allows this because Hadrian is emperor, and grief does strange things. After Hadrian comes Antoninus Pius, which tells you a lot right away. Antoninus rules peacefully, almost boringly. No major wars, stable economy, quiet administration. Rome prospers, which historians love, but storytellers find challenging. Antoninus prepares his successor carefully, another adoption. This time, 2 heirs. One of them is Marcus Aurelius. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor. He rules alongside Lucius Verus at first, then alone. Marcus is thoughtful, serious, exhausted. He spends much of his reign dealing with wars on the frontiers, plagues, economic strain. At night, he writes personal notes, reflections, reminders to himself to be patient, kind, rational. These notes become the Meditations, a deeply calm book written by a man under constant pressure. Marcus tries his best, which is all anyone can ask. And then he makes one mistake. He does not adopt a successor. He leaves the empire to his biological son, Commodus. Commodus is not Marcus Aurelius. Commodus loves spectacle, attention, glory. He fancies himself a gladiator, fights in the arena, against opponents who are very careful not to win. He renames Rome after himself, renames months after himself, identifies with Hercules. This does not inspire confidence. Commodus rules erratically, executions, conspiracies, paranoia. Eventually, he is strangled in his bath by his own wrestling partner. Rome exhales again. The era of the good emperors is over. 5 rulers, nearly a century of relative stability, an accident of competence. Now the empire enters a more chaotic phase. Short reigns, military emperors, economic strain. The 2nd century closes, and the long, slow decline begins. Not suddenly, not dramatically, just gradually, like a structure settling, cracking quietly. Let's keep going. Softly, unhurried. Rome has just lost its last sensible adult. Marcus Aurelius is gone. Commodus has been removed. And now the empire feels strangely hollow, like a grand house that still looks impressive, but the pipes are starting to make noises at night. After Commodus, Rome stumbles into instability again. There is another brief scramble, another round of emperors appearing and disappearing. Some reign for months, some for weeks, some barely unpack. The army now understands something important, very important. It understands that emperors exist because soldiers allow them to. This is not great for long-term governance. Eventually, a new dynasty emerges, the Severan dynasty, founded by a man named Septimius Severus. Severus is a soldier from North Africa, efficient, practical, not sentimental about the Senate at all. He wins power through civil war. Naturally. Once emperor, Severus increases soldiers' pay, which makes the army happy, and increases taxes, which makes everyone else quietly unhappy. He famously advises his sons, "Be harmonious, enrich the soldiers, and scorn all others." This becomes policy. Severus dies while campaigning in Britain, which feels appropriately Roman.
Power passes to his sons, jointly. This does not work. The sons are Caracalla and Geta. They hate each other, viscerally. They divide the palace into separate zones, with guards and locked doors. Eventually, Caracalla has Geta murdered in their mother's arms. Then he executes anyone who liked Geta, which is a lot of people. Caracalla is brutal, paranoid, and oddly generous. He grants Roman citizenship to almost all free men in the empire. This sounds progressive. It is also very convenient. More citizens means more people eligible for taxes. Caracalla is eventually assassinated while relieving himself by the roadside. Rome barely reacts anymore. What follows is chaos. Young emperors, figureheads, relatives elevated and discarded. One emperor, Elagabalus, is especially memorable. Elagabalus is a teenage priest from Syria, brought to power by family manipulation. He shocks Rome constantly. Religious experimentation, extravagance, ignoring tradition entirely. Ancient sources describe wild banquets, lavish clothing, social confusion. Some of this is likely exaggerated. Romans hated being uncomfortable. Either way, Elagabalus does not last. He and his mother are murdered, their bodies dragged through the streets. Rome moves on. Then comes Alexander Severus, young, mild, guided by his mother. He tries to rule sensibly, cut costs, negotiate with enemies. The army does not appreciate this. They kill him. And with that, Rome enters what historians later call the crisis of the 3rd century, which is exactly what it sounds like. From about 235 to 284 CE, the empire unravels slowly and constantly. Emperors rise and fall with alarming speed. Most are proclaimed by armies. Most die violently. Civil wars overlap with foreign invasions. Economic breakdown, plagues. Inflation spirals. Coins are debased. Silver content drops. Prices rise. Trade suffers. Cities shrink. Public buildings fall into disrepair. The empire fractures. At one point, there are breakaway states. The Gallic Empire in the west, the Palmyrene Empire in the east. Rome is still Rome, but barely. And yet, it does not collapse. It just adapts. Eventually, a man emerges who decides enough is enough. His name is Diocletian, and he is very tired of pretending one person can run everything.
Easy now. If you're half asleep, that's perfect. Rome is about to reorganize itself. And honestly, that's a very paperwork-heavy process, ideal for drifting off. So we arrive at Diocletian, late 3rd century. Everything is on fire. Metaphorically, sometimes literally. Diocletian is a soldier, from humble origins, not from an ancient noble family, which already tells you the old rules are gone. When he becomes emperor in 284 CE, he looks at the empire and realizes something important. It's too big, it's too complicated, and one person cannot possibly manage all of it without losing their mind, or their head, usually both. So Diocletian does something radical. He splits power, not the empire itself, not yet, just the administration. He creates the tetrarchy, rule by 4, 2 senior emperors called Augusti, and 2 junior emperors called Caesars. Each one governs a portion of the empire. Each one has armies. Each one is supposed to cooperate. This is meant to solve succession crises and constant civil wars. It almost works. Diocletian also changes how emperors behave. No more pretending to be first citizen. No more casual toga vibes. The emperor is now distant, sacred, untouchable. People bow.
kiss hems of robes, approach carefully. This is the dominate, the age of domination. Rome becomes more formal, more rigid, more bureaucratic. Diocletian reforms taxes, which everyone loves. Just kidding, no one loves this. He ties people to professions. Farmers stay farmers. Soldiers' sons become soldiers. Mobility decreases. Stability increases. Freedom, less so. He also reforms the army, splits forces into border troops and mobile field armies. The goal is defense, not expansion. Rome is done conquering. It just wants to survive. Religiously, Diocletian is traditional, very traditional. And this brings us to the Christians. By this point, Christianity has spread widely, quietly, persistently. Diocletian sees it as a threat to unity, refusal to worship traditional gods, refusal to honor the emperor's divine role. So he launches the Great Persecution. Churches destroyed, texts burned, Christians imprisoned. It is harsh and ultimately ineffective, because belief, once embedded, is very hard to remove. Then something shocking happens. Diocletian abdicates, voluntarily. In 305 CE, he steps down, retires to a palace in Dalmatia to grow cabbages. This is real. When later asked to return to power, he allegedly says they should see the cabbages he's grown. Rome does not know what to do with this. Without Diocletian holding it together, the tetrarchy unravels, power struggles resume, again. Out of this confusion rises another figure, a man who will change Rome permanently. His name is Constantine. But we won't rush. Rome does nothing quickly anymore. Constantine begins as one of several contenders, son of a former Caesar, ambitious, patient. He fights rivals, wins battles, gains territory, and then, before a crucial battle, something unusual happens. Constantine sees a vision, a symbol, a cross, and the words, "In this sign, conquer." He adopts the symbol, wins the battle, and credits the Christian God. Whether this was faith, politics, or both is still debated. Probably both. Constantine eventually becomes sole ruler, again. But he does not rule like Augustus or Diocletian. He embraces Christianity, supports it, legalizes it. The Edict of Milan ends persecution. Christianity moves from illegal to favored. This is a massive shift. Constantine also founds a new capital on the site of Byzantium. He renames it Constantinople. Strategic, defensible, Eastern. Rome is still important, symbolically, but power has moved. Constantine rules confidently, autocratically, with religious undertones. He delays baptism until his deathbed, just in case. When Constantine dies in 337 CE, he leaves the empire to his sons. This goes about as you'd expect.
Let's keep drifting. No sudden changes. Just a long, slow shift. The kind Rome is very good at. Constantine is gone now. And as always, succession is awkward. His sons inherit the empire, together, briefly. Then they begin removing each other, also briefly. Eventually, one son remains, Constantius II. He rules alone, cautiously, suspiciously. By now, Christianity is no longer a fringe movement. It is favored, supported by the state, argued over constantly. And these arguments are intense, not violent, just exhausting. What is Christ's nature? Fully divine? Fully human? Somewhere in between? These debates fill councils, letters, endless theological paperwork. The empire is Christian now, but not unified. Meanwhile, borders are under pressure.
Germanic tribes move closer, not all at once, not as invaders at first. Some are refugees, some are mercenaries, some are allies. Rome lets them in, settles them, uses them as soldiers. This seems reasonable. It is also complicated. After Constantius II, a short-lived pagan revival appears. Julian, called the apostate later. Julian rejects Christianity, prefers old Roman gods, Greek philosophy. He rules briefly, tries to turn back time, fails, dies on campaign, which ends that experiment. Christianity is now permanent. The empire continues dividing administratively. East and West operate differently. Different economies, different pressures. The East is wealthier, more urban, more stable. The West is stretched thin, less money, more frontiers. In 378 CE, disaster strikes. The Battle of Adrianople. Roman forces face Gothic troops, miscommunication, poor coordination. The Emperor Valens is killed, an entire Roman army destroyed. This shocks the empire. For the first time in centuries, Rome looks vulnerable. The Goths are eventually settled within imperial borders, as semi-autonomous groups. This becomes a pattern. Rome can no longer fully control everyone inside its own territory. Enter Theodosius I, the last emperor to rule both East and West. He makes Christianity the official state religion, bans public pagan worship. The old gods fade quietly. Temples close, statues are ignored. When Theodosius dies in 395 CE, he divides the empire between his sons, east to one, west to the other. This division becomes permanent. The Eastern Roman Empire will continue, strong, organized, eventually called Byzantine. The Western Roman Empire will struggle. In the West, emperors come and go, often controlled by generals, often sidelined. Real power lies with military leaders, many of them not Roman by birth. In 410 CE, something symbolic happens. Rome is sacked by the Visigoths, led by Alaric. The city itself, the eternal city. It has been centuries since this happened. The shock is immense, psychological more than material. Rome survives, but confidence does not. Later, the Vandals sack Rome again, more thoroughly, taking treasures. The Western Empire shrinks, province by province. Britain is abandoned, Gaul fractures, Spain slips away. Emperors rule from Ravenna, marshy, defensive, not inspiring. Finally, in 476 CE, a young boy emperor named Romulus Augustulus is deposed by a Germanic general, Odoacer. Romulus is not killed, just retired, which feels fitting. There is no dramatic end, no final battle. The Western Roman Empire simply stops appointing emperors. Life continues. Administrations shift. Kings rule in Roman-style ways. Rome does not vanish, it transforms. The Eastern Empire continues for another 1,000 years, calling itself Roman, thinking of itself as Roman. And in many ways, it is. Roman law survives, Roman roads, Roman language, Roman ideas. Even now, you are surrounded by Rome. Calendars, governments, architecture, words. The empire falls, but it also doesn't. It just changes shape. And that's the Roman Empire. Slowly, quietly, without fanfare. A story of ambition, bureaucracy, family dysfunction, and very persistent systems. If you're asleep now, Rome would approve. If you're still awake, don't worry. Empires take a long time to fade. So do thoughts. Just let them drift.
We're past the fall now, which sounds dramatic, but mostly feels administrative. No explosions, no final speeches, just fewer letters being sent and fewer officials being paid. So let's float gently into the aftermath. Because Rome, being Rome, does not actually go away. In the West, new rulers appear. Kings, warlords, former Roman generals. They do not destroy Roman systems, they use them. Roman talk structures remain. Roman laws are copied. Latin continues to be spoken. The so-called barbarian kings wear Roman clothing, issue Roman-style decrees, and desperately want Roman legitimacy. They rule in Rome's shadow. Even the church steps in. Bishops become administrators. Churches replace forums as centers of community life. The Pope slowly becomes one of the most stable authorities in the West. Not powerful yet, just reliable. Meanwhile, in the East, the Roman Empire never fell. They do not call themselves Byzantine. That name comes later, much later. They call themselves Romaioi, Romans. Constantinople thrives. Trade flows. Gold coins remain stable. Emperors rule with ceremony. Law codes are written, especially under Justinian. Justinian dreams of restoration, reclaiming the West, Italy, North Africa. For a while, he succeeds. Then reality sets in. Plague, war, costs. Still, Roman law survives, collected, organized, preserved. And this law will shape Europe for centuries. Rome lives on in monasteries, in manuscripts, in legal traditions. Latin evolves into new languages: French, Spanish, Italian, Portuguese. Even English borrows heavily, very heavily. The idea of empire persists. Charlemagne, the Holy Roman Empire. Not Roman, not holy, not really an empire. But the name matters, because Rome matters. Even modern states look back to Rome. Republics, senates, eagles, columns. Everyone wants a little Rome. And maybe that's the point. Rome was never just a place, or a government, or an army. It was a habit, a way of organizing power, a way of thinking about authority. It liked rules. It liked systems. It liked pretending everything was under control while quietly improvising, which feels familiar. So when people ask, why did Rome fall? The calm answer is, it didn't. Not really. It stretched, adapted, shifted, split. It stopped being one thing and became many things. And that's a very Roman ending. No drama, no curtain call, just continuity. If you're asleep now, Rome has officially won. If you're still awake, that's okay too. History has a long echo, and tonight you've been listening to one of its longest. Just let the thoughts slow, like an empire settling into memory.
We're in the soft ending now, the part where nothing really happens, and that's exactly the point. By this stage, Rome is no longer marching. No legions on the move. No emperors issuing dramatic proclamations. Rome has become background noise, infrastructure, assumptions, habits people don't even realize they inherited. In the West, centuries pass. Kings rise and fall. Borders change names. Languages drift. But when disputes arise, people still reach for Roman ideas: written law, property rights, contracts, courts. The church adopts Roman structure. Dioceses mirror imperial districts. The Pope inherits ceremonial authority that once belonged to emperors. Even the titles feel Roman: Pontifex, Curia, See. In the East, Constantinople keeps going. Emperors still call themselves Roman. Their coins say Roman. Their laws are Roman. They speak Greek now, they worshipped differently, but they are convinced deeply that they are the real continuation. And honestly, they're not wrong. When Constantinople finally falls in 1453, it is the end of the last Roman emperor. More than 2,000 years after Romulus allegedly argued with his brother over a patch of land. That's an impressive lifespan for an idea. Rome outlasts belief systems, outlasts governments, outlasts itself. And it does so quietly, without needing attention. Which is ironic because Rome loved attention, loved monuments, loved titles, loved being remembered. And here we are, remembering it, very slowly. If you think about it, Rome would approve of this format. Long, detailed, a little bureaucratic, occasionally ridiculous, mostly human, full of families that didn't get along, systems that worked until they didn't, rules bent just enough to survive. Not heroic, not tragic, just persistent. So when your mind starts wandering now, that's fine. Let it wander through old roads, worn stones, quiet ruins at dusk. No battles, no speeches, just the hum of something that once mattered and still kind of does. Because Rome never needed you to stay awake. It just needed you to remember it existed. And now, you can let that memory fade into sleep. No alarms, no endings, just rest.
We're not really continuing anymore. We're drifting, which is exactly where a long empire ends up anyway. By now, Rome is less a story and more a low, steady hum, like an old appliance you forgot to turn off, but it's been running so long it feels wrong to silence it. Think about daily life long after emperors stopped mattering. Farmers still wake up early, still work land divided centuries ago by Roman surveys and street lines. Roads still guide travel, even broken ones, because once a road exists, people trust it more than empty space. Villages form near milestones, bridges become meeting points, markets appear where Roman troops once rested. No one thinks, yes, Rome planned this. They just live inside the leftovers. That's how empires really win. In old Roman cities, forums fall quiet, columns crack, statues lose faces, but people reuse the stone. A temple becomes a church, a bathhouse becomes housing, a basilica becomes another basilica, honestly. Rome was very good at multi-purpose buildings. Latin keeps evolving. Spoken Latin becomes rougher, local, more relaxed. Grammar loosens, pronunciation shifts. New words sneak in. No one notices the moment Latin becomes French, or Spanish, or Italian. Language drifts while everyone's asleep. Roman law keeps being copied. Monks rewrite it. Scholars argue over it. Even when kings rule by force, they like Roman law behind them. It sounds official, final, impressive. According to ancient law is the medieval version of trust me. Rome also lives in imagination. People imagine Rome as perfect order, or perfect decadence, or perfect decline. Everyone projects their fears onto it. If society feels unstable, Rome becomes a warning. If society feels ambitious, Rome becomes a blueprint. Either way, Rome is useful, which is probably why it never fully disappears. Even now, when you hear words like Senate, Republic, Citizen, Empire, Province, Governor, that's Rome, still whispering, softly, patiently. Rome does not demand attention anymore. It doesn't need applause. It already had that. It's content being a reference, a comparison, a long-running metaphor. And that's a very Roman ending. Not a collapse, not a triumph, just continuation. So if your thoughts are slowing now, that's fine. Empires fade best when no one is watching closely. Let your breathing settle. Let history blur into background texture. Rome has done its job.
it can rest, and so can you.
We're fully in the after hours now. Lights dimmed, doors mostly closed, only a few echoes bouncing around. At this point in history, Rome is no longer something people argue about loudly. It's something they reference casually, like an old rule everyone half remembers but still follows. Kings issue laws that quietly copy Roman phrasing. They don't credit Rome. They don't need to. Rome has become anonymous authority, which is the most powerful kind. Universities appear much later. When they do, they dig up Roman texts like old instruction manuals. How did they organize cities? How did they tax people? How did they make this many humans obey rules without constant screaming? Roman answers are imperfect, but they exist, and that's comforting. Students fall asleep over Roman law, which feels appropriate. Architects copy Roman arches because arches work. They don't argue, they don't complain, they just distribute weight calmly. Rome understood gravity very well, both physical and political. Even calendars feel Roman. Months named after emperors, days arranged with suspicious order. You live inside a Roman scheduling system and probably never think about it, which Rome would love. And somewhere, deep in the background, the idea of decline keeps resurfacing. People say, "This feels like Rome before the fall." They say it in every century, about everything. Too much luxury, too much corruption, too much bureaucracy, not enough discipline, too many outsiders. Rome becomes a mirror. People don't see Rome in it, they see themselves. Rome just quietly holds the reflection. Meanwhile, ruins sit peacefully. No longer warnings, no longer lessons, just scenery. Tourists walk through them, historians whisper in them, cats nap in them. Rome would approve of the cats, because after all the ambition, all the conquest, all the paperwork, this is what remains. Stone, stories, a feeling that systems outlive individuals, and that maybe none of this is urgent. So if your thoughts are drifting now, good. You're doing history correctly. No conclusions required, no moral lessons demanded, just a very long human experiment settling into quiet memory. Let your mind follow the old roads until they fade into darkness. Rome isn't going anywhere. It already went everywhere it needed to go. All right, still here. Or maybe just barely. Either way is fine. At this stage, Rome is no longer something you visit in your mind. It's something you pass by without noticing, like an old building on your route that you stopped looking at years ago. That's the final form of influence. Rome becomes habit. When governments count people, that's Roman. Census taking, lists, categories. When roads are numbered. When cities have grids. When authority is written down instead of shouted. That's Rome again, quietly clearing its throat. Even rebellion looks Roman. Organized, structured, full of titles and committees. Rome taught people how to oppose Rome, which is almost poetic. Centuries roll on. No one wakes up thinking, "Today I will live in a post-Roman world." They wake up thinking about weather, about food, about small problems. History only feels loud when you're inside it. From a distance, it's mostly routine. Rome understood routine better than anyone. That's why its end feels unsatisfying to people who want drama. No fireball, no final emperor speech, no music swelling. Just fewer clerks, then fewer soldiers, then fewer coins. The empire didn't fall. It clocked out early and never came back. And yet, its desk is still there, its chair still warm. You sit in it sometimes, without realizing. When you trust a document, when you wait your turn, when you accept that systems are slow,
and people are flawed, and somehow things still move forward. That's Rome whispering, "Yeah, this is about right." So if your thoughts are thin now, if they're looping gently, that's okay. You've reached the end of the road. And roads, as Rome knew, don't need conclusions. They just keep going until you stop walking. Let the empire fade completely now. No need to remember details. No need to hold on to names. Just the sense that something very large once existed and now rests quietly beneath everything else. And you can rest too.
Still drifting. Still very slow. Like the last page of a book no one rushes to finish. By now, Rome isn't even history. It's construction material. Quite literally. Medieval cities reuse Roman walls because they're already there, already thick, already stubborn. Why build new defenses when old ones still work? Rome planned for centuries, even when it didn't mean to. Stones carved for emperors end up protecting bakers. Bricks stamped with legion symbols support quiet homes. Nobody thanks Rome. Nobody curses it either. It's just useful. And usefulness is the least dramatic form of immortality. Inside those cities, life continues. Messy, ordinary, unremarkable. People argue over land, over taxes, over rules that no one remembers creating. And that's very Roman too, because Rome loved rules more than it loved people. Rules felt safer, more predictable. People kept ruining things. So Rome left behind systems that assumed people would be imperfect. Courts for disputes, officials to interpret laws, paperwork to slow decisions down. Boring, effective, exhausting. Modern life still runs on that energy. Forms, queues, permits, deadlines. You are living in a Roman afternoon. Not the exciting Rome, not the gladiators, not the marble speeches. The late afternoon Rome, where everyone is tired, nothing is urgent, and the system just needs to hold together until tomorrow. That Rome lasted the longest. So when your thoughts feel repetitive now, when your mind circles the same ideas gently, that's not a failure. That's structure. That's history settling into routine. Let the walls stand. Let the roads stretch out. Let the empire remain quietly embedded in habits you don't need to name. There's nothing left to learn here, only something to drift through. Rome has already finished speaking. Now it's just echo. We've reached the part where no one is really watching anymore. Not historians, not emperors, not even the monks with their careful handwriting. This is Rome without an audience. Long after the names fade, long after the dates blur, people still live inside Roman assumptions without knowing they came from anywhere at all. A town has boundaries. That feels normal, but it's Roman. Authority has levels. Local, regional, central. That's Roman too. Power is abstract. You can't see it, but you feel it. In rules, in expectations, in quiet compliance. Rome perfected invisible control. Not because it was clever, but because it was tired. Tired empires don't shout. They organize. Somewhere in Europe, a farmer measures land using old units passed down and slightly altered. Somewhere else, a judge hears a dispute using logic shaped by Roman precedent. Neither of them thinks about Rome. Why would they? Rome succeeded by becoming forgettable. That's the part most empires miss. Greatness wants applause. Survival wants silence. Rome chose survival.
Even its failures became lessons. Too much expansion, too much inequality, too much dependence on systems that required perfect cooperation. Later societies nod thoughtfully and then repeat the same mistakes with new names, which Rome would find very familiar. At this point, there's nothing left to conquer, no reforms to announce, no legions to deploy, just the slow exhale of something that has already shaped the world and doesn't need to check in anymore. If your breathing is slower now, if your thoughts are softer, that's good. History was never meant to be exciting forever. It was meant to become background, context, the quiet reason things feel the way they do. Rome understood that better than anyone. So let the last traces fade. Let the empire dissolve completely into routine, into structure, into sleep. No ending needed. Rome doesn't end. It just stops interrupting.
This is the point where even the echo of Rome starts to feel sleepy. Not gone, just very, very quiet. At some point, historians stop arguing loudly and start agreeing softly. Rome mattered. Rome changed things. And then life kept going. Which is not dramatic, but it is honest. People still name their buildings after Roman ideas. Capitals, forums, senates. They do it out of respect, or habit, or because it sounds important. Mostly because it sounds important. Rome understood branding long before branding was a word. Even the idea of citizenship lingers. Rights, duties, belonging to something abstract. Rome took belonging and turned it into paperwork. That paperwork outlived the empire. Meanwhile, actual Roman ruins sink into the landscape. Vines grow, grass creeps in, walls lean slightly, like they're finally allowed to rest. No one rushes them. Time does the softest demolition possible. And maybe that's the most Roman ending of all. Not destruction, not triumph, just gradual absorption into the ordinary world. Rome becomes scenery, then memory, then assumption, something you feel without needing to explain. So if your mind is almost empty now, that's fine. You've reached the part of history where nothing needs attention anymore. No lessons, no warnings, no inspiration posters. Just the sense that humans keep building systems, and systems keep outlasting the people who made them. Rome did it first, and then everyone else followed. Let your thoughts slow completely now. No need to hold on to names or dates. The empire is already asleep. You can be too. This is the last stretch where thoughts still form sentences. After this, it's mostly just feeling. Rome, by now, has fully stopped caring whether it's remembered correctly, or at all. Historians argue details, dates shift, interpretations change. Rome doesn't mind, because Rome isn't fragile anymore. It doesn't rely on accuracy. It relies on presence. You don't need to know who Augustus was to live in a world shaped by Augustus-style thinking. You don't need to remember legions to move along roads built on their logic. Rome exists without supervision, and that's rare. Most things need attention to survive. Rome learned how not to. It handed its weight to others, to governments, to religions, to languages, to habits. Then it stepped back, quietly. No farewell, no final monument, no "we did our best." Just a long pause that never really ends. If you listen closely now, there's no story left to follow. No timeline, no characters, only rhythm, breathing, thoughts slowing, awareness thinning out. This is what history looks like when it's done being history. It becomes texture, like stone under grass, like old foundations under new buildings, present, unnoticed, holding everything up. And you don't need to stay awake for this part. Nothing new will happen. Nothing urgent will arrive. Rome has already said everything it needed to say over the course of centuries. Now it's just letting silence finish the job. Let your thoughts loosen. Let them drift without direction. Empires don't need conclusions. They just need time. And time has plenty. Rest now. At this point, even Rome would be surprised we're still talking about it. Not annoyed, just mildly impressed by the endurance. Because Rome, in its final form, was all about endurance. Not glory, not conquest, just holding. Holding borders, holding systems together, holding the idea that tomorrow should look mostly like today. That instinct survived everything. When people rebuild after collapse, they don't invent from scratch. They reach backward. Rome is always there, waiting, like an old blueprint with coffee stains and folded corners. Use what works, ignore what doesn't. That was Rome's real philosophy. Not strength, not virtue, practical survival. And practical things age well. So Rome stops being impressive, stops being inspirational, stops being frightening. It becomes dependable, which is why it fades so gently. No one mourns dependable things loudly. They just notice when they're gone. And Rome never quite left. If you're still listening now, your thoughts are probably thin, soft, uninterested in detail. That's perfect. This story doesn't need details anymore. There are no more emperors to meet, no reforms to explain, no wars to quietly summarize. Just the sense of something very large finally releasing control, letting the world run without commentary. Rome doesn't watch anymore. It doesn't judge. It doesn't instruct. It simply exists as residue, like dust in the corners of history, like muscle memory in civilization, like a rule everyone follows without remembering why. And that's enough. You don't need to stay awake. Nothing important will be missed. The empire isn't going anywhere. It already became everything it was going to be. We're past the point where Rome notices itself, past the point where anyone is keeping score. This is the stage where the world continues, and Rome doesn't even bother to linger as a thought. Cities grow where Roman towns once stood. Streets bend slightly, because they were built around something old that no one wanted to move. People assume that's just how the street is. That assumption is Rome's final gift. Even when societies reinvent themselves, they don't question the basics. That laws should be written, that authority should be documented, that space should be organized, that time should be measured. Rome normalized order so deeply that chaos now feels unusual, which is ironic because Rome itself was often chaotic. Messy politics, bad emperors, confusing transitions. But the idea of Rome felt stable, and ideas are easier to inherit than reality. So generations grow up inside Roman-shaped frameworks without ever hearing the name. They argue about policy. They complain about bureaucracy. They feel tired by institutions. That tiredness is ancient. Rome was tired too. That's how it learned to make systems instead of speeches. If your thoughts are drifting now, if they're repeating quietly, that's fine. History at its deepest layer is repetitive. People organize, people complain, people adapt. Structures persist. Rome was just very good at making persistence boring.
which is why it lasted. So there's nothing left to carry forward, no message to remember, no warning to internalize, just the slow settling of something that has already done its work. Let your mind relax completely now. Let the timeline blur into nothing. Rome doesn't need you to understand it. It already understands you. And not understanding is enough to let everything rest.
This is the part where even continuation feels optional, which means we're doing it right. Rome, by now, has fully dissolved into expectation, not memory, not myth, just the quiet sense that things are supposed to work a certain way. You stand in line, you wait your turn, you trust that someone, somewhere, has written this down properly. That faith is Roman. Not optimistic faith, practical faith, the kind that assumes systems are imperfect, but still preferable to chaos. Rome never promised happiness. It promised order. And sometimes that was enough. By the end, Rome didn't collapse under enemies. It softened. It spread thin. It handed responsibility to habits instead of people. That's why it feels endless. Because habits don't die dramatically. They just get absorbed. And now there's nothing left to say. No final lesson, no summary, no clever closing line. History rarely gives those. It just fades into the background and lets life take over. So if you're asleep now, that's perfect. If you're half awake, that's also fine. The story isn't going anywhere. It already finished a long time ago. We can keep going, very gently. Like churning a page that doesn't really have words on it anymore. At this point, Rome is no longer a subject. It's a texture, like the background hum of a city at night, when traffic is far away and nothing urgent is happening. People still inherit Roman ideas without ceremony. They inherit the idea that authority comes with paperwork, that decisions take time, that nothing important happens quickly. Rome trained the world to be patient with systems, not happy about them, just patient. That patience is exhausting, but it's durable, and durability was Rome's final achievement. No one feels inspired by Rome anymore. They feel resigned. And resignation lasts longer than inspiration. Even revolutions use Roman logic. They write constitutions. They define offices. They establish procedures. They overthrow power and then immediately rebuild it in a very Roman way. Because even rebellion needs structure. Rome taught that too. So when your thoughts loop now, when they circle without arriving anywhere, that's not boredom. That's history doing what it always does after the noise fades. It becomes atmosphere, something you're inside of, not something you observe. You don't need to stay alert. Nothing is hiding in the next sentence. No twist, no reveal, just continuation. The same continuation Rome mastered over centuries. Breathing in, breathing out, systems holding, people resting. The empire has nothing left to ask of you. You can let go completely now.